Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of American Grit with myself, Tim Jensen. We've got a banger of a show for you today. We talk a lot about military culture on this program, between military sexual assault to mental health and all the things in between. And there's a lot of interesting conversations that we have. Today is another one of those great conversations. We're bringing to you an old friend of mine, Anthony Anderson from Guardian of Valor, as well as Chuck Ritter, to tell an interesting story of what I consider the good, the bad, and the ugly, the parts of the military culture that we just don't really hear a lot about. And I think it's important to tell these stories because they do affect a great deal of people, both in the military and then, the drama that happens outside the military in the veteran community. So, this is interesting stories. And I think, again, the what we try to accomplish here through American Grit is to bring you these interesting stories of the culture that we live in and the culture that we have the ability to shape and change. And today we're going to hear a great story about all of what I just talked about. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me introduce Chuck Ritter and Anthony Anderson. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so long time it's been since I've gotten to see you, but yes, Anthony, you're back in the military scene in the veteran space, bringing forth what is in a very important situation, a very important topic of conversation, the stolen valor within our community. We're going to get into learning a lot more of what you've done in the past and what you're doing in the future, and how you played a part in this story. Chuck, welcome. Welcome. You're not new to the San Antonio area, but you're new to the Grunt Style building. So we appreciate having you out here today, and I want to hear more about your story and why it's important for our community of active duty and military veterans, why it's important for them to understand what is going on and how these situations have the potential to destroying careers. And we have a lot of individuals that listen to this that have great aspirations of going into the military and spending an entire 20-30 years there, right? And to hear these types of stories, these are some traps that everybody should be mindful of.
Yeah, right. So let me start off by saying I'm a retiring active duty sergeant major. I've been in for 26 years now. Anything I say on this show does not reflect on what the Army believes or their opinions, right? This is just Chuck Ritter speaking. So I normally don't say that in podcasts, but I figure, yeah. So you get a wide audience base. So.
It's very wide.
And then with that, I'll say too, although this is a weird story, we can find ourselves in these strange situations, and not everything in the military is always awesome. The military as a whole, regardless of the branch, it's a great institution, right? Yeah. It comes up all the time online. I mean, you've seen it. People are like, yeah, have you learned nothing? Like, would you have your kid join the military? Absolutely. Great institution. The things that you learn and get to do are amazing. There's nothing else that allows you to do that. So we'll start there. But where do you want to start with the story?
Well, I think I want to hear, who you are as an individual, and, how has your life been shaped from your experiences? And how did you find yourself caught into this dust devil of a situation? I guess because it's fascinating to me, and to see how it spread across social media, and following it the entire time. I was like, wow, man! Like the power and the influence of this device and the ability to communicate is fascinating to me, right? It's like this whole enigma of the way that we communicate and use social media to spread messaging, and right. It can be used in many different ways, right?
Don't underestimate the power of being able to excite and agitate a base of people to accomplish whatever you want,
right,
in the modern world, right?
It's
incredible.
It's almost like we are taking PSYOP strategies that we've been implementing on countries across the globe, and now we have the ability to do it to ourselves with social media. Right. But that's a whole other story. But yeah, I think starting off at the beginning of who Chuck Ritter is and how did you find yourself into this story?
So I'll give a quick synopsis, and if anybody just wants to, if you Google Chuck Ritter, it brings up a lot of stuff. There's a longer version of my story on a podcast about to come out, but let's do the quick version. So when I was younger, I was a bad kid. I'm talking like really bad. I failed my first drug test for the Army on purpose because I kind of got my high school diploma in a weird way where I was going to a special school, and I was going there because I was horrible in school, and it was like for pregnant people and hoodlums. You went 20 hours a week. I was missing one credit algebra, and this recruiter kept bothering me, and I kept telling him I didn't want to join the Army, and he's like, okay, well, why? I was like, because I'm still in high school. So one day, my parents kicked me out of their house. I had to live in a trailer because they were going out of town, but we still found a way in. Threw a big party. On a Sunday, I'm cleaning up all hungover, and I get a ring at the doorbell, and it's this recruiter, and he's got my transcripts of my high school diploma in his hand, and he's like, hey, man, you keep telling me you're not joining the Army because you haven't graduated high school. Well, check it out. If you go to MEPS with me tomorrow, like, here's your transcript. You graduated high school. I was like, man. And again, people are like, oh, you shouldn't tell this story. It's bad. Yeah, well, maybe, but there's a good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So I call up one of my friends. I'm like, hey, man, you need to bring over all the marijuana you got to my house right now because I got a drug test I got to take tomorrow that I can't pass. He's like, well, that makes no sense. Like, who wants to fail a drug test? Are you crazy? He's like, don't ask questions. So he came over, went to MEPS, got my high school diploma, transcripts. Like a week later, or maybe a week and a half later, called me up and was like, hey, man, I'm sorry, but you failed the drug test. I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I don't know how that happened. Right. Anyway, so that, I was working at Radio Shack. There was a credit card fraud thing going on where I got charged with $70,000 worth of credit card fraud stuff. I failed bowling class in college, so that was like, okay, I got to do something with my life, right? And then I joined the Army, and when I joined, we had back in the old PT test in the Army, you could score max of 300 points, but you had to score 180 to pass. I scored 93 points on my first PT test in basic training, and people like online, like, how do you do that? I was like, well, when they give you the briefing, they say, hey, you can walk, but it's not recommended. And I took that to heart. So I ran 24 minutes, which gave me 0 points on the run, right? And like 10 push-ups or something.
So you didn't really want to be there at all.
No, so at that point I did want to be there, but I was very unathletic. I'm not the guy that you're like, that guy needs to join the Army. Like if I was a recruiter at the time, I'm like, X that dude off the list.
Yeah, sure.
Right. My parents had a bet against me when I went to basic because they were both in the military. They both retired. My dad bet against me, and when I was after AIT, like they're exchanging money. I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" Like, oh yeah, we had this bet going on that you were so much of a lost cause and suck so bad that there's no way you're going to pass this thing. When I graduated AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, because I was an infantryman, I came out of there with like a 210, which I thought was awesome. But then when I showed it to my infantry unit in Hawaii, they're like, 210, like, you can't be showing up here with a 210, man. Like, what's wrong with you?
Right? Remedial.
So they a lot of PT in Hawaii, and I had some really good people that they invested in me, right? When I showed up in that way, some really good leaders that just invested time in me. They put me on a machine gun team for like a year and a half to whip me into shape, and that worked. And then, I was able to change a faulty mindset, which we'll get into here in a little bit. I'm a firm believer that it usually takes some kind of like catastrophic event to really shift your ego to where you can change, but managed to be very successful all the way up to where, I went to Special Forces selection, became a Green Beret, tons of deployments. Anthony here has seen my entire records, get all my NCOERs, multiple Valor Awards, and I'm known for getting shot a lot. Taking 4 PKM rounds, became machine gun rounds over the course of 2 times, and then in 2008 I was blown up. Like the whole front, like from here down to my face, down to the below my jaw, was rebuilt over the course of 4 years.
Wow.
So people are always gunning for me, right? It's like, and I'm sure like my personality doesn't help, and I piss people off because just the way I am. I'm pretty honest and open, and that's just what it is. So 26 years later, here I am, and then where the story begins, like 2 years ago, I found myself like woke up one morning, I'm in this news article, and then a month later, I'm in like 12 other tabloids, and I'm in a French tabloid, right? Yeah. I'm like, holy, what the hell's going on here? So that was I woke up and, it was all over the place. There was an investigation on that found it to be not true, but it's what it was. And then 2 years later, that stuff is still there, affected me. And it was problematic. And when you dig deeper into the story, though, it's like super bizarre, which, let Anthony tell a lot of that because it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is unbelievable, especially the more you learn, you're like, there's no way any of this is true. People are making this up, right?
It's so bizarre, right?
But it's a thing that people need to watch out for in the military because it does happen. And although this is a case where it's a female doing this, there's plenty of men that do these same things. To think that personality disorders are more male or female, that's not really. There's people that aren't good or are ill, they have ill intention on either side of the spectrum, right? So. And then a matter of like, weaponizing systems, stuff like that. And there's things you can do as soldiers to fight against this. Like a lot of times you're going to be told like, hey, don't engage with the media. Like, I think that's bad advice. I think there's rules that you need to educate yourself on. There's a PAO, or at least in the Army, the 360-1's the public affairs regulation. We have a joint ethics regulation which covers all services. Educate yourself on those things, because you can still talk to reporters. You can do things. You don't badmouth your commander in chief. Don't talk badly about the military. Don't bring in politics, especially if you're going to be associated with the military anyway. Just be smart about what you do. But you can, and this is good proof where, we use the systems to fight against this, and I paid 0 legal fees, right? And we're still able to accomplish getting these articles taken down and putting the truth out there.
Yeah. That's good advice, because you talk to a lot of young soldier, sailors, and Marines today. They're like, they don't really understand what they can and cannot do, right? Mm-hmm. The manuals are all there, but nobody wants to sit and read a tome of orders, and
it's not fun to read it, right?
Right.
But the secret to success in the military is always educate yourself.
That's it.
Being ignorant's never cool. I never looked at somebody you know what, man, you really don't know what you're talking about, and I appreciate that. You want to come work for me, right.
Let's promote you. Well, they'd probably do that on the officer side.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So, So again, you come from a very good community of high impact players. Mm-hmm. You spent a long career doing that. You've had some really good exposures to leadership throughout your career. How did that all really start coming into how you navigated the situation? I guess more importantly, what is the situation we're talking about? What happened to Chuck Ritter that 2 years ago you wake up and you're all over, it started with an article to then be spread into tabloids.
Right. So it started about 4 or 5 years ago on a serial rotation. Had a soldier that made some poor choices, but very good at what he did. He's a very good, competent communications specialist and a very good, competent joint tactical air controller. But he kept making bizarre decisions that were leading to his downfall. So came to a point to where sent him home early, removed him from his team, took him out of some special schools, and made it so he didn't get an award. And what I told him when that happened is, hey, I'm doing this because I think that you have the potential to be an excellent soldier, but I think that your ego's in the way. I think this needs to serve as an ego check for you, so you can reset and then be successful. So I want you to spend a year in the company, not on a team, reset yourself, and just, you need to correct this behavior somehow, because it's multiple decisions that are going to this. And then I ended up leaving the company, going to another job, and then he got put back on the team, and then he was like, oh yeah, the Sergeant Major was trying to screw me over, right? So that started it, and then he got involved with a certain female, and this is bizarre, and it doesn't sound like this is believable, but she'd planted the seeds in his head that I was behind all of it. I mean, he was already thinking he couldn't take responsibility for his own actions. So he'd already oh, Chuck's trying to screw me over. Well, she took that and she twisted it. She used that against him. And she started texting this guy playing the role of her father for a year and a half. Well, we've seen the text messages. Anthony's seen them. And she's done this to other people too. So he thinks he's talking to this command sergeant major that's retired. And he's telling him yeah, I'm trying to help you out, but this Chuck guy is so powerful and he's trying to screw you over. And so then he already had those beliefs, right? Because he wasn't about to believe that he did anything wrong. Yeah. And then goes into this. So all this happens, and I'm just trying to get away from this at this point in time. But it's almost like there was a higher power telling me hey, I know you don't want to do this, but you're going to reach out to this dude. All kinds of crazy stuff. One day my lawyer called me. She's like, what was that dude's name? And I gave her the name, and she's like, hey man, he's trying to hire me. So one of his friends called me and wants to hire me as the attorney for this guy. This guy named Chris wants to hire me for this other dude that was the guy trying to go after you. And apparently his wife was lying to him and got his tab revoked and all this crazy stuff. And that's what I didn't tell you. He got his special forces tab revoked for some other stuff too. I was like, man, that's weird. And then coming to find out, the guy that called my lawyer was actually this girl's first victim, who was married to her, just happened to know my lawyer's husband, who I was friends with, right? This weird stuff. And then in January of the next year, this investigator's in my office. He's like, hey, I know you probably don't want to talk about this, but I ain't talked to him. I go, what is it this time? He's like, well, do you know who this person is? And he says her name. I was like, I don't know that person. He's like, no. He's like, you know this person, she was using this pseudonym, this other name in the articles. That's not her real name. I was like, oh, okay. So I gave him all the stuff for my investigation. He's reading through it. He's like, this is a pattern. This girl is a con artist. I'm like, so that happens, and a month and a half later, I come to work and a guy comes in. He's like, "Hey, Chuck, you're not gonna believe this. I was getting a tattoo, and this girl shows up in the tattoo place, and she's trying to con my tattoo artist." I was like, "What?" Like, and it's just like this higher, like you can't get away from this. So I was like, I felt like this calling. You gotta contact this soldier that was part of this. And I was like, "That's ridiculous."
Let's pause for a moment.
It's weirder than you expected, isn't it?
Right. I just want to bring it back down to earth for a minute, right? Because for everybody that's following, so you have this soldier that's under your command that is struggling within the teams, right? You take him off the team, you put him back in the company, and say, hey, it's time for you, to spend some time on yourself, focus on what it is to be a good soldier, yada yada yada, right? No indictment, just go back over the story. So that happens. There's a feeling from that individual that there was some spite involved in that decision, and then he meets this girl along the way that is throwing fire on that because she's just someone that just meddles in people's affairs, right? To manipulate. It's
part of her con. Like when we get into that story, it's wild.
Okay, all right. So I'm tracking, right? All right, good to go. So this woman comes in, and in that orbit, there's all these other people that are now affecting degrees of separation from you. Your attorney, people at a tattoo parlor, just random encounters that this woman is now starting to hit your radar. These people are coming back to you saying, hey, this weird instance has occurred. I thought you should know. Wow. All right.
It's out of the blue, like weird stuff.
Okay.
Right? And the investigator that was in my office, like he was investigating somebody from a totally different unit that she was like doing the same thing to. Just bizarre. Right?
And she's not, at this time, is she married to this to the former soldier, or was it just a developing
She was still married
relationship?
she's still actually right now married to this soldier that I fired.
Yeah.
But at any given point in time, she's generally married to somebody, has a fiance, and has 2 boyfriends. And I don't know how the logistics work with that. Like maybe we need to hire to like revamp our S4 systems because I don't know how you pull it off.
Sure.
But she has like some whole cover story where she's a nurse and she travels, so she's gone for a week, but really she's with the other person, and it's wild. Like it's impressive. Like,
The layer of the con.
just parachute her into China or Russia and let her do her thing. But, so, and I felt this feeling, like, I got to reach out to this guy. I don't know why. And every time I try to fight against it, like.
And this is your former soldier?
This is my former soldier. So I reach out to him, and he's like, this morning I was praying to any higher power just for a sign because, we're about to go to this other court date. I've been arrested X amount of times. I found out my special forces tat was, probably really revoked, partially because of her, a lot of my own stupid decisions. He's like, and this text is like, when you fired me, you told me that you felt I needed an ego check. And he's like, at the time, I didn't see that. I thought you were just coming up to me. He's like, but now I see that as absolute truth. And that's what I needed. I was hot, making stupid decisions. And then you were absolutely right. I want to meet up. So we met up. And then at the time, like I didn't know the whole story. So he starts telling me all this bizarre stuff about the text from her dad and like even more like stuff that's just unbelievable, which I'll let Anthony get into some of that stuff. And I'm like, there's no way this is true. But then he started like, he's showing me like videos. He's showing me like these texts. And I'm like, this is the craziest stuff I've ever heard in my life. He's like, oh yeah, she's really good at like manipulating and creating fake text messages because the whole investigation against me, it was all like, I was going after this girl, this soldier's wife, and we were having all these conversations, and I was like, basically just more spite, like trying to go after this guy for whatever reason.
And that's what the media, the tabloids were based on.
Yeah,
that's
what
what
the tabloids said.
That's what the original
the
story
were,
that came out.
Like the sergeant major fired this dude, and then he demoted him, and he sexted his girlfriend or his wife, and it was.
That's when I started seeing the stories last summer.
Yeah,
and some of the stories were involved around like third group, sexually trafficking women to a bar of an old sergeant, of a command sergeant major, right? And all these different just weird stories. And you're like, what the fuck is going on out there? That's when I started tracking it in the sense of asking a lot more questions, and then Anthony sends me an email, right? So how did you two get connected on this whole journey?
Well, let me before I pass it over to Anthony real quick. So I had sat on it for a couple of years because I was like, you know what? I don't know what to do here with it. It's kind of weird. And then after talking to the soldier, I'm like, hey, this is wild, right? And then I started talking to a bunch of her victims, like exes, and there was all the same stories, all the same thing. And it kept getting weirder and weirder and more wild. I'm like, this is like, this would be like a Netflix movie or something. So I had a reporter, Julio Rosas, he wanted to take a crack at it. So I was like, look, don't believe me. I could be full of crap.
Yeah.
Here's everything. Here's what the story says. Here's everything. Dig into it. If I'm full of crap, call me on it and write about it.
Right.
So he digs into it, he talks to everybody. He's even asked me, he's like, Chuck, this doesn't add up. I'm like, okay, well, they talked to this person, and finally he wrote this story. And, it told the truth, and it makes her look pretty wild, man. The whole thing looked pretty wild. And then I was like, okay, we got one person now. He's unbiased. He's looked into this. Like, we need another person if we're actually going to go and put this out publicly, because I was talking to the soldier and his mom at this time too, because they wanted the truth out there. And I was like, well, I don't know Anthony, but he's a well-known entity. People trust him, and he does good investigative work. So I reached out to him, and I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah. Prior to, I think it was November last year, I never even knew who Chuck Ritter was. He shows up in my inbox one day. He's like, hey man, can I get your help with something? He said, no, you don't know me. He said, but you're well known within the community for your investigative work. He said, there's some stories out there that have been placed online on me that are not true. He said, they're hurting my reputation. He said, I'll send you the stories, send you the information I've got. If you'll look it over, do your work, and just give people your opinion on what you think.
Yeah.
So it took me about 3-4 days, I believe, to go through all the, I think it was probably 6 gigs of information. I can't even remember what all the information was. I had sworn statements from soldiers, sworn statements from prior victims of this female, videos of her physically attacking these soldiers, text messages that she had forged. That's one of the original articles that was put out on Sergeant Major was based on these fake text messages, and actually a phone call. It was actually a phone call. The wife of the soldier reached out to Sergeant Major and claimed that she was being abused, and so of course, him being in the position he was in, he wanted to help. She took this phone conversation and just completely, I don't know how she did it, AI, whatever, and made it sound like he was trying to be sexually involved with her. Same thing with the text message. All the text messages were forged. And so once I investigated all that, I put the story out there. I even talked to the journalist who wrote the original story. And because me and him were friends, we go way back as well. And he kind of admitted that, yeah, maybe I was too quick to jump the gun. Maybe I should have looked deeper into the conversation and to what she was saying, because at the time the soldier himself believed what his wife was saying. Why not believe your wife, and
Right.
This was before he found out that even the text messages from her father, supposedly, were also faked. So once I put that out there, the veteran community really picked up on it. And they started running with it, going to this journalist and saying, hey man, here's the evidence, it totally debunks your article. How about remove the article? He wouldn't respond. So eventually we reached out to the company that was the owner of the article with the information, and they removed the article. Originally they put an update on it and said, hey, we've got information that this story may not be true. But that wasn't enough, because you Googled his name, and, it was one of the first things that popped up there. Sergeant Major accused of having sexual relations with a soldier's wife. That's not good. So we just kept pushing them, the veteran community kept pushing them. And finally, they took that article down. And once that article was removed, the Daily Mail went and put an update on their article, because they basically taken that article and copied and pasted over to the Daily Mail and said, hey, check out this, this Sergeant Major, blah, blah, blah. They still haven't taken their article down to this day, but they have 2 big updates basically at the top of the page, banners that basically say, hey, this story's false.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically how how it
And
came to be.
you have a history, right? Chuck came to you because of your background,
Correct.
And the things that you do. You've spent many years researching individuals that were claiming stolen valor,
Correct.
or receiving benefits in the falsities of their military service.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about what that just give the listener an understanding of that level of research that you do, right? And what all does that entail? Because frankly, like, who are you? Like, for the people that are listening, like, okay, so this Guardian of Valor guy researched all this. Well, there's a reason why you are who you are in this community and the work that you do. Share a little bit of that with the listeners.
Well, I started back in 2009, 2010 timeframe. At that time, I was in the military, E6, didn't even know what stolen valor was, honestly. Happened upon it by chance. Me and a friend of mine started a Facebook page back in 2010. Facebook pages were just becoming a thing. And we started an infantry Facebook page, basically a place where infantry guys could come together, shoot shit, and not be bothered by anybody else. Had a guy come to us and say, "Hey man, check this guy out. He's down here in Florida and he's running around staying at these different women's houses claiming that he was in Afghanistan and he got shot in the face and, that he's getting veterans benefits," and he's like, "Something's fishy." So basically that's what started. I started looking into it, started looking into the what stolen valor was. Actually reached out to a few people that had been doing it for years. Doug Sterner's one. He's a military historian. I reached out to him, and then I reached out to a lady by the name of Mary Shantag and Chuck Shantag. Chuck passed away a few years ago, but basically they investigated false POWs from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of people that were claiming to be POWs from Vietnam, and so they took me under their wing and taught me how the investigative process worked as stolen valor goes. So I started a page on Facebook, Stolen Valor. Then I started the Guardian of Valor website. And basically what I would do is open these investigations on these guys or girls, whichever it may be. And I would investigate them like I was taking them in front of a jury. I would say, okay, if I took this in front of 12 of my peers, would they say, hey, yeah, this person is guilty? And if they wouldn't, I wouldn't even post it, And along the way, I built up contacts within the Special Forces community, Navy SEAL community. Don Shipley, me and him work together. He does all my fake SEALs.
Yep.
And I think within the past decade of doing this work, I've actually had probably 5 or 6 successful prosecutions due to my investigative work. And so I think that's one reason Chuck came to me, because he knew the veteran community as a whole would trust my work.
Yeah, absolutely. Grunt Style and Guardian of Valor has had a relationship for many, many years.
Yes.
We've been a custodian of the website to make sure that it is preserved and it doesn't go anywhere. And that work continues.
Yes, sir.
So I certainly know of what Anthony Anderson and Guardian of Valor does for the community and the level of thoroughness that goes involved in it. So to get that stamp of approval, right, is like, oh, okay, well, there's some tomfoolery afoot here that's going on. So we go back to the timeline, right? So Guardian of Valor is involved, helping you, Chuck, to start pulling down these tabloids. You get most of them pulled down. What happens next?
Yeah, so this is where it got pretty interesting, because the parent company for the journalist, they had put a head like the tag on there, right? But when it still looked like nefarious. I'm not sure if they were just trying to avoid being sued or whatnot, but I got a letter from a lawyer, which I just do what any rational person would do, is I just posted it on Twitter and made fun of it. But then I emailed the legal counsel, and I was like, okay, this is what needs to happen, right? And this is everything that I sent to Anthony and this journalist. So we haven't publishing this stuff. I'm talking, I have all the communications between this journalist and this female, and a lot of other sworn statements from people that I'm sure he thinks are their friends and other people. I'm like, this is going to go like online in X, Y, and Z. And then within 4 hours, I got an email back like, yep, here's head legal counsel. It's gone. And then right after that, it was the Daily Mail. They put a second caption on there because if you read it, it's like, hey, this article is BS. And then they put the second caption like, no, really. If you read this article, it's really BS, right? Like,
so why don't they just take it down? Like,
it does, right?
Right? It doesn't make sense. Like,
it doesn't.
But being up there now, I can use it for messaging in the future because this stuff can happen. And there's still a bunch of other articles that are based on the original. They're copy and paste of the original article that was up that are out there.
Yeah, this is curated.
But it's okay. It's if you Google me now, it's the record's straight by what he's posting, what Julio Rosas wrote, and this isn't over, right? We're gonna tell this story more thoroughly, and there's some documentaries and whatnot in the works, and some other podcasts that, I mean, the story itself is so crazy. It's, I mean, even a 6-part podcast, we're talking about like an hour and a half an episode, isn't enough time to even scratch the surface. But like, I mean, we're talking, people have gone to jail, people have been framed for things to where there were federal marshals arresting them, like, just wild stuff. Like,
I mean, when the folder was shared with me, it took me a weekend,
right?
A full weekend to get through all the content. It was a lot.
And now there's even more stuff. Like more victims have come out of the work. I mean, some more videos just got posted yesterday that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And it gets crazy. Like how is that even? How is it even possible?
Yeah. I think anything is possible when it comes to young men and women in the military and predators, right?
Right.
I think I go back to use myself for an example. Early in my enlistment, I might have signed up for a very large contract that I had no right being involved in, right? Mm-hmm. And I was captured by a bunch of younger kids in San Diego. And, they propositioned me for a sale. I signed a contract. And the next thing you know, I'm reading this on the Greyhound back to Pendleton. I'm like, what the hell did I just sign here? And I get back, my platoon sergeant's like, you need to go to JAG. And I went up to Mainside, went through that whole thing. But there are predators that are just going after young, service members, right, for a lot of different reasons, right? But it's a real thing, right? And like how do you protect your soldiers or your juniors, as a leader against some of this predatory action? That I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, right. I think some of it's education too. Educate yourself on the red flags of some of these personality disorders, which generally, if somebody doesn't have emotion or they don't feel remorse for these things, there's probably something deep-rootedly wrong with them.
Yeah.
And maybe, like, I'm sure with this specific female, like, she probably creates her own reality. Like, she believes what she tells herself, and she probably doesn't feel bad about it.
Yeah, and she's still out there today. Correct?
She's still out there
She
today.
is. She'll pop up every once in a while on Twitter with a fake profile, and she'll make a comment or two, and then she'll disappear again.
Yeah.
My thing is somebody like Sergeant Major. I mean, he's got a stellar career. I mean, Silver Star, Purple Heart. If somebody can come after him and bring him down the way they did, I mean, how do we protect our younger soldiers that don't have the knowledge that he has, or that doesn't have the know-how to protect themselves from somebody like this female or even a male?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it happens. It's happening a lot more. I'm seeing a lot more of it. They're coming after them for the money. I mean, everybody knows, hey, that they're getting that guaranteed paycheck every month. So I think it's a matter of figuring out how to educate your soldiers, how to tell your soldiers, hey, watch out for these types of predators. But sometimes it's hard, man. I mean,
we all get the classes like, hey, you be aware of these people are doing like exactly the situation I found myself in. Like,
right.
Right. But, I was a dumb kid.
A lot of it comes down. I think the easy thing is ego, and when you're younger, and all of us need to check our ego.
Oh,
It's the great defiler. Ego is the great defiler, and we all have an ego. Like, if anyone says they don't have an ego is just your sense of self, your sense of self-worth, right? But it's when it becomes problematic. And this female and other females like her, that's what they look for. They look for people with egos that maybe a little bit emotional that they can manipulate, and they know they can extort you with the military.
Yeah.
The military system, you call up, hey, this person's beating me, or whatever, and then they use that against them.
It's like the girl in what's that movie? The Natural. Remember that girl? Oh, really? With Robert Redford, the baseball movie. There's a point where this woman targets Robert Redford, and because of his ego and his sense of self,
I mean, you watch that
and
one, right?
shoots him, tries to destroy his entire career, and he survives. And makes it through. But
Sounds like a how-to.
it's very similar. Like that was the very first things that were coming to my mind. I'm like, holy shit, man! Like that. Is this art imitating life?
I mean, it's possible, right? But that's what they target, and we can all find ourselves in these little traps of ego. But going back to like what that soldier told me is like, hey, you told me I needed an ego check, and now like the soldier. This is actually a good news story. The soldier lost his special forces tab, right? But he's now at a point for the first time I've seen in his career where he takes responsibility for his own actions. He's told me, he's like, hey man, you were right. I need to take responsibility when I do something stupid, right? That's the only way to learn. I think that if we can be okay with that, we're going to be much better off in life. And you'll probably see the red flags in these situations too, but it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
Like, we need to make failure more accepted and just okay, because you're not going to grow with that failure. It's not defeat. Failure and defeat are two totally separate things. Don't fail at the same thing over and over again. That's pretty stupid.
Right.
Which, unfortunately, in this case with this female, some people did that, but then once they get out of it, like, yeah, that was really dumb. Yeah. But she's also very good at what she does. So this soldier he's getting out of the military, but he's got a pretty lucrative contract being offered to him, getting out. And I think that he's in a mental space now to where he can get out and he can be successful. He's in a mental space to where he's not all arrogant and hot and egotistical. It's like, okay, I make mistakes. I got to take responsibility for those and learn from them. And I think that's a story as leaders too in the military. You're going to have a lot of people that you think are lost cause. I was a lost cause coming in. And maybe you invest time in that person, and it doesn't work out and you wasted that time, but it's still your job as a leader. You don't have to like these people. You still have to care for them, and you still have, it's your duty and your obligation to invest the time into them. And maybe 50% of them don't work out, but the other 50% that do, and anybody else would have written them off, like this guy in particular, people have written him off, right? Like this guy's, there's no hope for this guy. In fact, I got hemmed up. They're like, why you invest in this guy? There's better people to invest your time in. And sent him off to a Talon's Reach Foundation. I got the TRF bracelet here. It's a foundation that I'm involved with. We take soft people and we take them out and we put them, get them right mentally. He went off to one of those, came back, and he just really focused on putting his life back together because somebody took some time to invest in him. Right?
Absolutely. I would take the person that is a lost cause over the high ego individual any day, right? To where I want to spend my time and energy, because you know where you're going to get with the egotistical. That's,
right.
That never ends well for anybody. But the fulfilling aspects of working with people that are grateful of the time and effort that's being put into them, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
Right. With this story, so this woman still is existing. She's still out there doing that work. Information is still popping up. What do you see will be the end of this situation?
Well, I mean, there was a court date this morning for she's put new charges on this soldier, and she's had his mom arrested for erroneous charges and just all kinds of crazy stuff. And I don't think their divorce is finally either. She keeps dragging that out. So, like, what's next is, and I'll go back, and I can count 33 careers that she's destroyed. Yeah. And there's more than that, I'm sure. And then some of the documents you read, like, this counts 145 guys. Like, it's like, wow, that's wild. These are court documents. So it's not like this is just us making stuff up. So, I mean, her name's out there. If you Google my name on the internet, it'll all come up, and you can do your own research there. But I think not just with her, but just, hey guys, like if you're a soldier and you're kind of hot-headed, like watch out for these kind of things, because you're gonna have these people come in, male or female, like, oh, this is a really attractive person. They're too good to be true, and you start getting what's called love bombed and stuff like that. That's a red flag. That's not real. Like people don't act like that in real, like long term. That's just know the signs and when you check our egos. But it comes down to resilience too. Like, I mean, this guy's probably on the verge of suicide, and now he's managed to be in a very good place mentally, and we're all going to find ourselves in those situations too. But man, whoever she gets her hands on, like, it's going to be a mental struggle. It's going to test anybody's resiliency there.
Yeah.
I mean, she's put some people, like, she's had attempted murder on some people.
Jeez.
At least twice that I know of, maybe 3 times. Like,
How is she free? How is she?
that's the question. Well, I mean, she's just very good at manipulating the systems and the laws, and then it comes to the point to where people are like, all right, I just don't want anything to do with this. Like, there's a lot of victims, and I first started talking like, I don't want anything to do with like this publicly. I don't want her in my life anymore. I can't handle it, because she goes back and she harasses all her victims like years later.
Yeah. Are you worried of her harassing you?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you go out and do these podcasts and.
Yeah, I just don't care. Like, I'm willing to accept that risk because I believe it's the right thing to do. She uses like Google text and other stuff. She has a bunch of fake numbers that she always, goes down the line. And be careful too with text. Like, it's so easy to fake a text. If you have an iPhone, you don't need a special app. You can literally just text yourself, change the picture and the name to whoever you want it to look like, and have a conversation with yourself, and go back and delete the duplicates and take some screenshots. Or even if you rip that phone, it's going to come up, it's going to look like, hey, this person had this conversation with pictures and everything.
Yep.
And that can screw you over in a court case or an investigation. But just be mindful that's that easy. I can make I made one to show him. In under 5 minutes I can create a very like complicated dialogue with pictures where it looks like we were talking about some like selling drugs or something.
Yeah. In the age of you hear it from all the cool kids, the age of receipts,
right? But people post something online, and everybody's like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, take a step back. Like, everybody's, we were talking about this earlier. Like, everyone's get riled up and emotional online. Like, take a step back. Is that even real? Especially in the modern day AI. Like, you don't know. Just if it looks stupid. It might be too stupid to be true, right?
Yeah. It's I have a good friend, Boone Cutler,
Yes.
talks about fifth generation warfare.
Yeah.
How we are stuck in the middle of it right now, and every day is a war for your mind. You don't know what the hell it is that you're looking at, and but something's wrong.
Yes.
So I mean it's a real thing, and and life continues to get stranger, and we continue to get thrown these incredibly weird stories and circumstances, and just got to make sure that you're ever being forever observant, right? I think is the right way of saying it, because you never know who you're going to encounter. This is an incredible story. Now, you say you have some documentaries that you're working on, and to talk about this. What is your intent with these documentaries? Or what are you looking to educate and inform your community, or a broader sense of people of what these scams are shaping up to look like, or what are you trying to accomplish with the documentaries?
The podcast ones really just give all those victims a voice. Like, hey, you can put it out there. It'll be run by Julio Rosas, the guy that wrote the other article, and just get that out there and let them say their thing, and everything they say on there can be backed up, and we'll make sure that everything that gets put out will have multiple people that have seen these things to back it up. Because everybody likes to do lawsuits these days, but in order to get sued, it's got to be fake. And that's another thing I do want to talk about for soldiers stuff. Like, when a lot of these journalists out there that do target mainly higher ranking military people, but you can easily find yourself in an article pretty quickly. And that's going to screw that soldier for life, really, because with search engine optimization, you Google a person's name and the employer's going to see it. And they don't care if the investigation, they just want it out there. And journalists know that as a soldier, when you're in an investigation, you can't talk about it. So you don't really have the ability to defend yourself. And then for somebody to sue a journalist, it's in the military, it's really hard, because in the States, you got to prove it was false, but then you got to prove that they were actually intending to do damage to your reputation, and then on top of that, you got to show damages, right? So even when we were looking at doing some lawsuits, it came down to my attorney's like, with everything you have, you're more than likely going to win, but the reality is, like, you might only get $1. Like, is that really worth it to you?
No, you're gonna be paying a lot of dollars.
He's like, now if they sue you and you do a counter sue, that's easy. Like, that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all for that. Like, come at me.
Yeah.
Right. And then just get all this stuff and put all this stuff that you've seen in public record. That's a win for me, right?
Yeah. It's pretty damning stuff.
But play it smart. You don't have to. Like, I didn't spend any money in legal fees on any of this, and we got everything accomplished. So just be smart about what you're doing, and feel free. You can reach out. Like, I'm on Twitter, and if you got questions, you find yourself in this situation, like, look me up. There's smart ways to play the game to where you're not going to get in trouble with the military. You're not going to spend a ton of money in court, and you can probably still accomplish the same thing, right? Just Green Beret stuff for me. It's like, all right, we got to create a partner force here, and we got to get them to do like something to achieve an end state. All right, that's just what we do as Green Berets. And if you want to know more specifically about me too, like I'm going to do a quick plug here. We didn't talk about this, but on April 8th, It's a Blast podcast. He's an active duty EOD captain. He's a commander. Great guy. He started up a podcast. The military's all behind it. He's great work promoting the Army and the service online, but he's going to release that podcast on the 8th. And he goes into super detail about how I was real dumb when I was younger. Yeah. And it goes into like the actual specifics of when I got shot in 2013, I actually died on the operating table and then came back the next year and took a machine gun round through the hand on like the third or the fourth mission. And he goes into detail those stories. But check out his podcast, and then check out the Pineline Underground podcast too. It's the one for the Special Warfare Center in school, but I just want to put those in there real quick before I forget, because I'm not very intelligent anymore. But anyway, back to the story here. Sorry about that. But so what I want to accomplish is just let's illuminate this. Let's get this person out there, because in those we are going to use her name, and it's going to be very specific. And then on top of that, just some education. Like there's some of the other stuff I'm working on. I was like, what happens if you find yourself in this situation? And then the resiliency piece too, because I've been dealing with critical injuries. I just had my 31st surgery since 2008 due to combat-related injuries, which was a full hip replacement on the right. My left femur's dead and collapsed, so I got to get that one replaced. I had a back fusion right before that, and shoulder rebuild and all kinds of stuff. So how do you stay resilient throughout your career? And then you find yourself where you're in those tabloids and everybody's suddenly coming after you. I do want to hit on that, and I want to educate on that. I like to hit on that here on the show too, because I know you guys are doing some stuff with, you got some stuff online, the triangular compass and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I wanted to lead into that next and saying, I think it's, it's important to talk about this idea of react versus respond, right? Mm-hmm. I think you made a very good illustration there by, saying that you went about attacking this objective, utilizing your Green Beret education and training, right? Mm-hmm. Like build a force multipliers. They got to go out and do the things that you need them to do. I think, we react far too often in the things that we do and where we find ourselves in any given situation, right? We find our less responding to a situation where we're like, okay, I'm observing what's happening. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to think about what my response is going to be. I think, me personally, and seeing, how our space just reacts to things ridiculously. And then your social media in general is just a total like react vacuum, right? Let's pour gas out it, pour the JP8, and let's all huff it. It's. I think the messaging that we should be all thinking about is like this idea of responding to these subjects and responding to these situations. With a little bit more thought.
That gave me a great visual. When you said, let's all go huff it, it's like they come out, it's burning, like, come on guys, huff this. Yeah, we gotta get it.
Right? It's going fast. Get while the smoke is black.
Yeah. That's what it's like.
Yeah. That's what happened with the story. I mean, social media, I think, is a double-edged sword sometimes. With Chuck's story, I think it worked very much to his advantage, because the veteran community came together as a whole, seeing that a soldier had been wronged, and wanted to help him, get his reputation back. And they continued to attack these journalists until they did what was right, So.
And there was a lot of reactions to some of the tabloids that were coming out. You can just go through like some of the comments on those pages, like what?
Yeah, yeah.
Some were wild.
Yeah. I mean, they would comment on the soldiers. The veterans would go out there and comment. As soon as they would post a news story, they would say, "Hey, what about this story that you falsified about, Chuck Ritter?" And they couldn't post. They couldn't even get online without a veteran from somewhere posting and saying, "Hey, how about go back and take down this fake article and you did on this soldier?"
Yeah.
And so they finally had to respond. We just kept pouring the fucking fire on them.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I find unique about the veteran community is like once you give them a fire mission or something to go after, Oh boy, do they rally!
They do.
Just waiting on a mission, right?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Just waiting on some marching orders.
But yeah, it's fabulous to see how people come together. We see it like in our social media when people will come into our comments and start shitting on the brand. Like the brand followers, like, "Whoa, hey guy, like fuck you."
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. But at the same time, like again, like we live in this world of instant gratification that we don't take that moment to sit back and take a beat and be like, how should I respond to this situation? Right.
Critically, right?
Critically, right?
Critical thinking is the thing. That's what we need to make cool again. Right?
Yeah. Well, Marxism is the flavor of the week here in the United States of America. So
Yeah.
I don't think critical thinking is going to be that popular in the near future. But I think that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely agree. And again, just teaching these younger kids. And these influential people, like, hey man, these people are really out there. There is evil that exists, and
Yes.
it comes in many forms. And how you're going to interact with it is sometimes you can kill it. Sometimes you're going to have to beat it to death with a lawyer.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's absolutely incredible. Anthony, what is the future of Guardian of Valor? What are your plans?
Well, as you know, recently we brought it back. The website is actually back online. Has some tweaking needs to be done to it. I had to download most of the old content from the Wayback Machine, so trying to get that to talk to the different databases and get it fixed and up and running. I'm hoping maybe a month it'll be back up to where it was. But I think where we're going to go from here is kind of like we're going to, it's going to be double-sided, Guardian of Valor. If a soldier comes to us and he needs help in the way Chuck did, we're going to tackle that mission just as well as we're going to tackle, this recent story of a guy in California. He was in his 70s, claimed a Silver Star Distinguished Service Cross, and had raised almost $1 million for the Democratic Party. Come to find out, he'd never served. Once I helped a journalist in San Francisco out him for it. Once he found out he had been he faked his own death.
That's crazy to me.
Then once he faked his own death, about a month later, found out he was still alive, but he's in Mexico. So that's a story we're still working on.
Jeez.
And he actually did violate the Stolen Valor Law. There was Stolen Valor Act of 2013 is the newest Stolen Valor Law. And the original Stolen Valor Law was found unconstitutional, which I do agree with. It was a violation of freedom of speech, because you could be prosecuted for us just sitting around the table bullshitting, and you saying, "Hey, yeah, man, I fucking earned the Medal of Honor."
Yeah.
Boom, you broke the law.
Yeah.
So they kind of 2013 they said, "Hey, okay, well, if you claim these awards, which includes awards like the CIB, Silver Star, Distinguished Service Cross, and you gain anything of monetary value or anything of value, it's considered fraud under the Stolen Valor Act, and you can be prosecuted." I think up until now, there's probably been about 60 to 70 cases prosecuted under that law. I had one recently, in my last, before I came back, I think he was found guilty under the Stolen Valor Act of 2013 and served 5 years. Had to pay the VA back $28,000 in benefits he had wrongfully received. So there, a lot of people don't realize there's still a law out there.
Yeah.
If you go out there and claim something that you didn't earn and you gain, whether it be money, anything tangible, you can be prosecuted at the federal level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Crazy.
So we're going to kind of focus on that. I'm trying to get the veteran community away from using stolen valor as a weapon.
Yeah.
That kind of irks me. I get tagged all the time on Twitter and Facebook, whatever, just because you and I differ in opinion. Oh, you're stolen valor. Hey, stolen valor, come check this guy out. Pull his military record. I want to know if he really served. that's not what we're here for.
It gets tagged on me
You know-
quite a bit. People be like, "This guy stole valor." There's no way."
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Chuck likes to go out there and joke around a lot on Twitter, and so he'll post these pictures of memes of, hey, check me out serving, and then some veterans that don't know Chuck will be like, hey, this doesn't stolen valor, and so.
I see a couple of those.
Like, that's clearly a plastic airsoft rifle. And then it's like, there's this one I post. The flash isn't even sewn on. They're like, who sewed that flash on? I'm like, well, obviously nobody. That's why it looks like that. Like, they're so mad about it. They're stolen valor.
Right. Yeah, people lose their minds. Right?
They do, man, and so I've kind of alluded to that on Twitter, telling people, hey, don't tag me in something just because you and this guy have a political disagreement.
Do you think that we're about 3 years post the GWAT era? Do you see a lot of stolen valor in comparison to the years following Vietnam, the years following Gulf War? Are you seeing any significant comparisons in the GWAT era?
Actually, it seemed, I don't know if it's just because there was nobody in that area over the past 3 or 4 years that were actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
But it seems to have gotten worse.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a lot more, even in the political arena, I get dragged into that a lot, and I think it's because there was nobody out there policing that area, that people were just felt more open to go and do it. So I think maybe now that we're back into the arena, and they know the website's back up and the wall of shame is going to be there, I think that kind of kept, I think that kind of kept people,
honest.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 'Cause they didn't want to be on the wall of shame.
Right.
But I'm hoping I'm not going to do like I did last time. Last time I got overwhelmed. That was one reason I had to step away.
Yeah.
I mean, literally hundreds of emails a day, hundreds of, and another thing I like to do is I like to help veterans that are like recently I had a guy reach out to me that his grandfather is in hospice, and his grandfather fought in World War II, but they can't find his records.
Yeah.
And they want to give him a proper military burial. And so I kind of like to do those as well because, these guys don't know how to find somebody's records,
Yeah.
So that's another thing we're going to focus on is kind of helping people find their
That's great.
history of their family members.
And Guardian of Valor, that's where people can go. And
GuardianValor.com.
all your social media handles?
Stolen Valor on Twitter, we're at Stolen Valor 1. On Facebook, we're not back on Facebook yet. I think we're still working on getting the original Facebook page back up.
Yeah.
That's something I think me and you'll talk about.
Yeah.
But right now, that's where we're at.
Very good. Very good. And Chuck, retirement right around the corner, sir.
It's right there.
What
on the cusp.
what's next for the Ritter family?
So people think I'm joking when I say this, but I'm probably just going to deliver pizzas for like 6 months. I'll be honest with you, I'm throttled back a little bit, but this allows me to tie in some of the great benefits of why you should join the military. The military gives you, well, besides all the life of adventure, right? I can spend the next 8 months after my retirement just I don't even have to have a part-time job. With my GI Bill, I'll get BAH and I finish up my degree because I got about 6 months to finish up my bachelor's. That's just because of being lazy. When I got to E9, I transferred all my credits over from all my schools, and I had 148 credit hours, or between 140 and 150. I'm not going to specifically, but between 140 and 150 credit hours. I went to a place called North Central Institute. They transferred it into a general studies thing, and then I went to Norwich University, and I had about a year for the bachelor's degree. Really, if I would have just did everything, knocked it out, about a year for a bachelor's degree, and you can do that, and almost any rank. You got a joint service transcript in any branch. Download that, take that, get that transferred into some credit hours, and go to school. But I'm probably gonna just chill out for about 6 months, finish up my bachelor's degree, and then from there, I got some pretty interesting plans. I won't divulge all of them, but probably at least one podcast, because
Yeah.
I was a producer and host of the Pineland Underground for the Special Warfare Center in school. And we managed to take a military podcast, which who wants to listen to that? And who wants to listen to a sergeant major and a major, right? Like, and I'll answer the question. Everybody's like, well, when you make sergeant major, do you get lobotomized? Like, yes. Like, I literally have a don't park on the grass sign, like, in my pub, right? Because that's the life I live. Like, you don't care about what keeps you alive in combat anymore. You literally care about haircuts, PT belts, and grass.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe like different colored socks. Like that's all.
Sergeant major's no fun.
Actually, you still think about all that stuff, but as a sergeant major, like, your job now is to deal with all the crap, so everybody else can do what they're supposed to do. Really,
In the Marine Corps, you get to choose the path. You can go admin bullshit, be a sergeant major, or you can go master gunnery sergeant and be a cool guy.
you don't get that. E9 in the Army is just mainly you're a former action guy. You're not cool anymore, right?
Right. Wheel them out. We need to make some decisions.
Just limping around. But yeah, so I'll do that. And then, you know, if you are in the military, like, make sure you take care of everything that's available to you, because it's a spoiled job. You know, a lot of people, like, on the outside view the military as like this hard job, which it is. It's a life of hardship. Right? And you're going to deal with dumb stuff. Like, if you don't think you're joining the military, you're going to deal with stupidity. Like, you didn't watch any war movies. It's just dealing through all the dumb stuff, even like these articles and stuff, allows you to have that life of adventure. Like, just incredible stuff in my career. Like, you know, I can't even name all the countries I've been to doing awesome things. And even if I would have just stayed in the infantry, it still would have been the same. You know, you're still traveling around doing things. But I tell people, like, look at that. And then, like, for me too, I got to worry about my resiliency and my mindset. Here's what I'll tell people is, like, all of us, like, check your egos, right? None of us are as awesome or as bad as we think we are on any given day. I promise you. Like, that's not the way it works. Like, check our egos, because I think that people don't talk about that with the resiliency, but I think the ego part, like, fooling ourselves into how strong and badass we are, is one of the reasons why we get in these holes and find ourselves in these situations. But on top of that, like, you know, the CEO of RWB, Red, White, and Blue, like, he likes to give this speech about how leadership is a relationship. But the reality is, resiliency is a relationship too. Like, really, it comes down to, like, keep yourself surrounded by people that you trust and that can be there for you, that, you know, you can just pick up the phone and call, like, hey, I'm going through this, or this is on my mind, or you can just hang out with and talk to. I think people get out of the military and they quickly find themselves in these situations where they don't have that community anymore.
Yeah.
And that becomes problematic, or even while you're in the military. And then just keep a positive mindset. And then what you were saying earlier, like, don't get all emotional. Like, humans are emotional animals. Anybody that tries to convince themselves that we're not logical animals. To stay logical takes conscious, like, you got to pull yourself back and be logical. Like, our go-to is emotion. Like, you see something on alignment, if you have an emotional reaction right away, you're probably not doing it right. Step back, and you don't have to have an opinion on everything. You can not have an opinion on something. Like, hey, I'm not really armed with enough information there to have a valid opinion, so I'm just going to choose not to have an opinion on that. But also tie that with the resiliency piece, having a positive mindset. Like, I know, like, I've been able to recover from all this and my surgery because I know that no matter what, I'm an unstoppable force of nature in life, and I'm a juggernaut. Once I get up to speed, like, besides God, nothing's going to stop me from reaching my objective or my end state. And that's what I've convinced myself of, and I know that. So maybe I'm down on the ground, I'm going to pick myself back up. If you can put yourself in those kind of mental, like, in those mind states, like, you're always going to be able to claw your way out.
Yeah.
But generally, if you're in a bad place, man, reach out to people. It's very rare that you can ever pull yourself out of a hole by yourself.
No, 100%.
Right?
You're not gonna be able to do that.
So, but yeah. So in 5 years, I don't know, maybe I'll make enough money where I'll buy Grunt Style.
Hey, right on, man. Right on. We could use a good old smudge around here. Right on. And, you know, I think, you know, one thing you said there is important, and I ask myself this question all the time. It's like, when I get, like, overwhelmingly stressed out or anxiety, it's like, you know, am I being shot at, and am I going to die? If I could say no to those two things, I could change the environment. Like, nothing is stopping me from doing that but myself. That's been a good tool for me. But, hey, Chuck, you know, I'm sorry that you had to go through all that, but it is a learning experience nonetheless.
I don't regret it, right? I'm in the position I'm in right now because of it. It sucked. But that soldier's also in the position he's in because of it, right? I mean, for him, like, I was just a pawn. Like, I was like a side ploy in her con against him, right? So, like, he's actually financially out, like, a ton of money, and so are these other victims. So
that's why she's going after them.
Right. But it could be worse. Like, if none of this had gone down this way, and, like, I think the the dumbest thing she could ever done is to go after me. Like, why am I? I'm not gonna sit on that. Like, I got the whole rest of my life to write about this and talk about this. So this is definitely not over for the journalists and everybody else. Like, if you think I'm just gonna shut up, like, hey man, like, probably not.
Yeah. Julio Rosas, he's a great journalist. I've worked with him in the past. Big fan of the brand, and it's cool to see he was involved in the story as well.
But I do got one question for you.
Yes,
the whole crayons thing with Marines. Like, I've always wondered, is this a true thing? Like,
I've never understood it. I get it. I get it that we are, not the brightest military service, and everything looks like a nail, and we may lick windows, right? And what we cannot do is count off from front to rear.
No,
but the whole crayon things is an enigma to me. I don't understand.
Okay, all right. I've never. I always get the same answer. Like, I found Marines. Like, I've never even heard of that before. Like, it's just like an Army joke. Like,
I think the Army made it up, and they're the ones that are keeping it alive, and the Marines are just like, okay, right, we accept it. Like, cool.
Yeah.
And we make shirts about it now. But you can also get the old Happy Birthday shirt that had little penises on it.
I heard the Marine Corps actually approved that.
Yeah. They didn't know. Yeah, we love our relationship with the Marine Corps. But nonetheless, well, we appreciate your time, gentlemen. And again, this is a fascinating story. We think it's important to share with you guys because these predatory people exist. They are preying on the military. They've been doing it for years and will continue through the future. Stolen valor will be a thing forever. And having great partners like Anthony Anderson leading the way and keeping ever on the wall of that conflict, it's good to have people like Anthony in the fight there. So preserving what we have all fought and worked very hard for, the uniform, the valor, and all the honor that comes along with that, and making sure that we're preserving it for the next generation that put on that uniform, because as we're seeing, recruiting is becoming a bit more difficult in this country, and the customs and the cultures are being questioned by the Marxist bullshit that we are living in. So having organizations out there that are continuing to preserve that, I think, is absolutely important. And hopefully you don't get stop lost. I didn't see the Army.
I think with as damaged as I am, it'd be they'd be bad.
Or it'd be why Marines shouldn't jump out of airplanes.
Yeah, Marines are jumping in, like we were talking about earlier, is like how, since Marines don't have an air assault school, they're always going to be subpar to the Army. And you're like, no, like if we're jumping in, there's a problem.
That's it. Well, great. And ladies and gentlemen, please check out guardianofvalor.com for all things Anthony Anderson is doing. And if you are so inclined on Chuck's story, reach out, follow him on his social media pages. Where can they find you on social media?
Google Chuck Ritter, it'll all come up. The good, the bad, and the ugly will all come up, right? It's all there.
There it is. The good, the bad, and the ugly, folks. Well, Chuck, I want to say thank you for your illustrious military career and the things you've done for our country. Anthony, thank you for your continued service and the things that you're doing.
Yes, sir.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is it for us at American Grit. Again, we talk about the stories that are a little bit different here and exposing some of the things that are happening within the military community and the culture that we are responsible for shaping. So we hope that you found a little bit of something for this, and we'll share it on your social media platforms for other people to consume this information as well. Until next time, you know what to do. Wash those stinking hands, be kind to one another, and we'll see you soon.